Hello. So today we're looking at Kevin Can F Himself, Season 2, Episode 8. You might recall back to the very beginning of this series, where Allison was dreaming about what her life would be without Kevin. And in this dream life, she'd be sitting in a nice cafe under red umbrellas, she'd be reading a copy of Ulysses, she'd been drinking some tea. And she didn't even remember who wrote Ulysses, so in her dream it just said Joyce something, which I thought was very funny. But this was the future that she's been working for the past 2 years. She's been working towards a future where she can just sit in a restaurant, relax, not have to worry about anything. Her life will be perfect. She'll be all smiley and happy, and she'll get to read a copy of Ulysses while drinking tea and eating scones. So now we are fast forwarding to 6 months later from the whole vanishing incident. And sure enough, she is sitting in a nice little restaurant in Keene, New Hampshire. We've got the red umbrellas. We got a copy of Ulysses in her hand. She's got a mug of tea, and she is just tired and frustrated. So now granted, Ulysses is not an easy book, so it's certainly a challenging book to read. But I think the greater point that is being made is that she thought everything would miraculously get better, her life would change, her personality would change, everything would be perfect once she got free of Kevin. And what she's finding is that in this new life, she still has the same concerns and issues and frustrations. And sure, Kevin isn't there as part of it, but he wasn't the sole reason that she was having all these challenges. He was just a part of it, and now she's also lost the support structure that she had for herself by pulling herself completely out of that life. In addition, we get little snippets of what everyone else has been doing in these past 6 months. So we've got Kevin and Neil and the father that think that Allison is dead, and Kevin, of course, is milking it for all it's worth. He's already got himself a new girlfriend. He picked her up only 2 months after Allison went missing. Neil is being a little more caustic and making fun of Kevin, but he is still just stuck in the same rut. He's still spending all his time with Kevin. And even when he leaves the house here, you can see that he's looking unhappy and frustrated, but he hasn't taken any action to change it. So he's gotten himself stuck. Kevin is still stuck in his same way of working. If anything, Patty is trying to go backwards. So she is stuck in the same house, and she wants to get Allison back to her. She really misses Allison and wishes Allison hadn't left, even though it was pretty much a necessary thing. Kevin's father is one of the only people who is not feeling stuck. He's grabbed his suitcase and is going south to Florida to be with his girlfriend. So he is someone taking positive action where he's going to be happy, one would have to imagine. Poor Tammy is willing to quit her job and do all sorts of things to try to make Patty happy, but Patty is just obsessed with Allison and wants to stay here and wants Allison to come back to her. So that's really the only thing Patty is going to have make her happy at this point in her life. And then we have Neil, who is caught with Diane, and his instinct is just to throw Diane under the bus and make fun of her, and Diane has had enough. This is not the way she wants to be treated in life. Okay, then we have a pretty key conversation which lays out a number of the different plot points here. So we've got Sam and Patty talking, and Sam in essence says that Allison has always been the way she's going to be and she's not going to change very much. And Patty seems to think that Allison changed and didn't even realize it, and that Allison gave up her entire life all to protect Patty. Well, if we look back at the past 2 years, Allison did everything to protect herself, and she did all sorts of things in order to hurt Patty, and Patty just didn't know about it. And the only reason Allison left at the end was because she realized that, the cops could keep investigating, and the guy in the coma could wake up, and there were all sorts of threats to her. And they could easily have thought up a way to explain away Patty's involvement in all of it if they really wanted to. But Allison left as much to protect herself as she did to protect Patty. So I understand Patty's feelings that, she's the best friend I've ever had and I will do anything to protect her. But it feels fairly one-sided given all of the things that Allison has done over this time period to actively hurt Patty. And Patty is still trying to protect Allison and take care of her. In the meantime, Allison doesn't seem to be really thinking much at all about Patty in the scenes that we've seen. And Allison has done many things in the past to hurt her. And she never really made an effort to say, okay, what's a way out of this that I could protect Patty? She just said, all right, well, I'm going to follow through with my plan of killing myself, which had always been my plan before. So she just did the same plan that she had been planning to do the entire series, besides, the whole let's kill Kevin plan, which is what got them into this giant mess to begin with. So I guess I understand Patty's urge here to say, oh, she's my best friend in the entire world, and therefore we must be soulmates. But I still just don't see the growth on Allison's side to say that Allison is deserving of all of this attention and dedication. And if anything, Patty is putting Allison at risk with all of this hunting her down, because if Allison really is scot-free and clear and is in danger, the best thing for both of them would be for her to stay free and clear and start her new happy life. Neil, who finally is standing up to Kevin and saying that, Kevin has made his life a living hell for their entire friendship, quote-unquote friendship. And Neil has said, you know what, I have had enough. Everything has been very one-sided. I've been the one here helping you and supporting you and taking care of you. And you have been focused on yourself and taking care of yourself pretty much all of the time. So Kevin is also making a life-changing decision here, saying that he's going to forge a new path for himself. And one could say, is he really going to stick with it? But hopefully he will stick with it and maintain a solo path going forward. You would think at this point that he would be pretty set on that path. So then we have a great pair of scenes. First we have Tammy talking with Allison and saying that Patty is never going to leave Worcester because Allison is missing, and Patty is just sitting there waiting for Allison to get back. And then Tammy's talking with Patty, and Patty says, I just want to stay put. I like it where I am, and what's so wrong about that? Why should I have to leave? So in both of these cases, I really like the phrase that Tammy uses, which is like one of those captain's widows. And this could be a New England thing. Many of the older houses along the coastline feature widows' walks, which were porched off areas that were up high, often on the roof, where the woman involved in a relationship with a seafaring man, the captain or the first mate or whatever, would stand and watch for him and wait for him while he was gone off to sea for months or even years, because her main focus was on getting him back and home to her and for them to live their happy life again. And that really is what Patty is doing here. Patty knows that Allison needs to leave, but instead of assuming that Allison is now leading that happy life, reading books on the cafe side and, getting a fresh start, Patty just wants Allison to come back home to her so that they can be friends and have the friendship that they have built up together. So Patty, in a strange twist, is no longer the one who's thinking about the group needs or about the other person's needs. Patty is thinking primarily about her own needs. She wants Allison back by her side so that she's not feeling lonely anymore. And even though she has a girlfriend who respects her and cares for her and wants the best for her, Patty doesn't want that. Patty just wants to have Allison back with her. And in essence, she doesn't care if Allison is off somewhere and happy, and is much, much safer if no one knows where she is. Patty wants to track her down and to, in essence, get her to come back into her life. So this is an interesting change in the way the dynamics of the scenes have happened. So we go right into Patty now being upset with Neil and taking out her frustrations with Neil and saying, I've helped you all this time. When have you ever helped me? And Neil said, okay, well, what do you want? And that makes me remember the scene where Neil went through all of that effort to try to make sure that Patty could have access to the skating rink. Neil thought this was very important and that he always took her to the skating rink and this should be something that she had access to. And certainly it's wonderful that Neil went through all that effort, and in the time when he was hurting and having all these other problems, his main thought was of Patty. But it's also fair to say that out of the wide range of things that Patty could want for her birthday, it's probably unlikely that ice skating was high on her list because she was never good at it, and Neil was good at it. Neil took her there because it was something he was good at, and he had fun doing it. And he never asked her what she would want to do for her birthday. I tried to do something that she might really enjoy. So he was, let's say, doing the best he could, but he could have certainly done better as a brother. He could have cared more about what she wanted out of life and taken her places that she wanted to go and been more of a support. And I know that he had all of these different problems in his life, but you want to try to overcome them, especially if you're with a sibling. You want to try to help each other, and it does seem like Patty was the more helpful one in their situation. And She says, what I want at this point is I just want to sit and smoke and not worry about someone else. And you could say that this is a little selfish, but it's also, I think, fair after 30 years of her doing all of this, that she just needs a break. She needs time to be able to sit and relax, which is what Allison had been hoping for. Allison had been hoping to be able to just sit and relax and read a book and drink some tea and not have to worry about things for a while. So these are completely valid things to want. It's also fair to say that there should be a way to achieve this without, killing off your spouse or doing other drastic kinds of things. So it's a shame that she couldn't say, let's work on this together now, instead of saying, okay, I am evicting you right now, go have a nice life. Especially, again, I have to go back to the whole, she attacked him and gave him brain damage and destroyed his life going forward. So it's a little unfair for me to say that she's at this point saying, I'm just going to kick you out. Goodbye. Have a life, whatever you can manage. So I have mixed emotions about this, but I also understand where she's coming from. So then we have a brief scene with Allison and Sam where she's saying, well, I left the only way I knew how and I had to run away. But, that's not the truth. What she did was she tried to kill him, and then she made a gigantic mess which involved all sorts of people and kept trying to involve more and more people in hiding her mess. And the only reason that she's back is because she wants to have the life that she had before. She realizes now that she destroyed everything for nothing at all. So she's going to put people right back in risk because she doesn't know that, even though the one thief guy is dead, there isn't any guarantee that, again, Neil's not going to say something or that other cops aren't going to get involved and realize what's happening. So the whole mess is still there. And Kevin is still a gigantic destructive force in everybody's life. So I find this a little disingenuous here. But she thinks that she is going to try to at least take a better path forward, which I suppose is hopeful. And then we reach what I think is one of the best written scenes in probably the entire series. And it involves Neil trying to make things right with Diane. And Diane saying at first, I want to stay with Chuck. And Neil says, what in the world are you doing? You don't want to stay with Chuck. He's abusive and this is a nasty relationship and I'm offering you a way out. But let's also remember that just a short while ago, Neil was actively lying about the relationship and making fun of it and treating her extremely poorly. So it is not a shock at all that she is not convinced by his sudden change of heart. And also we know that this is not wholly altruistic on Neil's part. He has now just been kicked out of the house and he needs somewhere to live. So now he has incentive to try to make things work. Would this have happened if he hadn't been kicked out of the house? He was trying to make things right with her. He did go to talk to his sister about trying to patch things up with Diane. But I don't know that he would have gone as far as saying, all right, let's move in together. It's time to face Chuck and get this all to work. So once again, she's saying, why do I want to leave? I tried and it failed. And he's like, well, but this is going to work better. We're going to work together and this will be a happier situation. At least she's starting to open up to the idea that this could work with the two of them. And again, we go back to Patty saying, I don't want to worry about anyone else. I just want to worry about myself. And, I have to subtract some credit from Neil because he needs somewhere to stay. But I also want to give him a little bit of credit saying he's been trying to be with Diane this whole time. He's been trying to make it work. She's making it hard on him by refusing to leave her husband. And part of why he's trying to keep it quiet is because her husband is really nasty and violent and is threatening, physical attacks on people. So maybe if she had been single, they wouldn't have been hiding it so much. Maybe they just need to be brave and get away from him. As much as some of these other relationships that were trying to break apart had challenges breaking apart, when you've got a psychopathic husband in the mix, there's a much more serious reason, I guess I'll say, for wanting to be cautious about how you approach it. But also, you should approach it because living with someone who's a psychopath like that is just not a long, good, healthy situation. So she says, all right, I will think about leaving, but I am sober right now. I want to start this the right way. And I don't want to start this in a way that you're trying to say that I need to fix you. We need to go in as equal partners, which is also fair. And again, I go back to what Patty was saying before about I need to focus on myself. It's not that Diane is saying that I can't care about you, but she's saying that I can't fix you. You need to be able to stand on your own feet. And I want to be able to stand on my own feet. And we have to have an environment where, there isn't a lot of heavy drinking and we're not worried about my ex-husband coming after me with a hatchet and trying to kill us all and all that kind of stuff. So I think this discussion with them, I wish it hadn't been tainted with the whole I need someplace to live, because I think it would have been much more powerful without that aspect of it. But that's just the way that this show is. They put in these extra layers of things. So we've got the aspect of Neil needing some place to live, but there's also now all right, Diane saying, I'm willing to think about leaving my husband. I'm willing to think about being sober and being with you. And he says, I can be better, you can make me better. And she says, and this is the great line in here, I can't make you better. It's not my job to make you better. You need to find the strength to stand on your own. And again, it goes back to like just a few hours earlier. He was making fun of her. He was picking on her. He needs to be able to stand up and be proud of what they have. She's willing to break away from her husband and do that, and then together they can move forward. So I really like this whole relationship dynamic, with that one exception about him being kicked out. And I like that they are preparing to find a path forward where they can be happy together, even with the complications. And then we have a brief scene where Molly leaves him too. So now Kevin does not have his best friend, he doesn't have his father, and he doesn't have his girlfriend, and he doesn't have his wife. So he's been abandoned and he's all alone. So I will take a break in here before we head into what we'll call the end scenes, and say that there are some people who have been stuck, like Patty, some people who are moving on, like Tammy. Diane's preparing to move on. Neil looks like he might try to find his way so that he can be strong, so that he can be with Diane, which is encouraging. Sam has moved on. He's got his bar and he's breaking away. He's divorcing his wife. And Allison and Kevin are the two who are still remaining with a question about where they're going to go forward. And Kevin looks like he is stuck, but he's never been alone before, so what is he going to do? And Allison is back and wants to have things change so that she can be happier going forward, but also stay here in Worcester. So now we head into the main climax part of the entire storyline. Allison is telling Kevin to his face, I want to get a divorce. We are going to be separate. We are going to live our own separate lives from now on. Kevin might have taken this easier before, when he had Neil and his father and Molly, but now he is all alone. He was just realizing how awful it was to be all alone. And now he has the person who he has always been able to berate or ridicule, when she wanted to go to Paris, when she wanted to go back to school, all these other things. He would just harass her and she would stay. So it makes complete sense to him that if he just harasses her, she's going to stay again. This isn't new or unusual or anything else in his behavior. This is just the way that he is, and he has done it in the past. He will do it in the future. He thinks if he belittles her and removes her self-confidence, that she will stay with him. So this is part of his nature, and he doesn't see why it would not work this time when it has worked completely well all the times in the past. I think I will also say at this point, since we are heading into the ending stretch of all of this, that he hasn't changed. I suppose you could say that she has changed, because she was willing to calmly face him and tell him what the plans were and not try to wheedle him or manipulate him or anything else. At the same time, I want to say that she knows that this guy is full of revenge tactics and is willing to rip out stop signs and do all sorts of other hostile and insane things. Why is she doing this with him all by herself in a home with nobody else there? She should have had Patty with her, or Sam, or heck, Tammy, or someone. There should have been someone else there in the house with her while she presented this. Or heck, she could have gotten a lawyer. She's probably going to need a lawyer to be able to handle the paperwork anyway. So she could have gotten a lawyer and had the lawyer serve him the papers. I realize that there must be some sort of catharsis for some people who watch shows like this, who want to see her facing him on their own terms and all that other kind of stuff. But she knows what he's like. She's been with him for years and years and years, and she knows how nasty he could be. So she would know better than anyone else that it's better just to serve him the papers and get it done and be out of the picture. Or if she really wanted to face him herself, to have someone else there to face him with, instead of doing this completely on her own. So again, this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense realistic-wise. They're just doing it for plot reasons, and those sorts of plot issues always bother me a lot. So let's see what happens. So she's saying, well, where's everyone else? Pete, Neil, Molly. And she's, sort of picking on him and saying you're all alone. But again, why would you torment someone that you know can be violent and evil? And this scene right here is one that made me very nervous, and not in a good way. It's very contrived. And he's going through the whole I will effing destroy you. And she says, do your worst. So again, I can see some people watching this and saying, oh, that's a great catharsis. She told him to his face and then ha ha ha. But really, why would you deliberately rile up someone who is a psychopath and make them go out? Because, I mean, he may not go after her. He may go after Diane or Patty or other people. And now she's just involving all sorts of other people once again in her nightmare, because she couldn't just serve him the papers and be gone. She had to try to rile him up deliberately, point out that he was all alone, and then stab him on the way out the door. I understand the need for hurting people who have hurt you and all of that kind of stuff, but she's, again, just not being sensible about it, and she's thinking about herself and her own need for feeling good about hurting him and not thinking about how this could play out for all of the other people in her life. And then we have the Deus Ex Machina, the stroke of plotline that saves them all. Kevin manages to burn himself up and the entire house in the process, but somehow miraculously it doesn't burn up Patty's house. So Patty's completely safe now in her own house next to the old burned out Hulk. And Patty gets her friend back, so she is all happy. And they're going to move in together and be happily ever after as best friends, and they won't have any boyfriends or girlfriends or anything else, just the two of them together. And to her credit, Allison says, I didn't want him to die now. I just wanted him to suffer a lot and go through the divorce proceedings, but I didn't want him to stop living, which is nice of them. And, I'll go back again to when they were very first knowing each other, that they were hostile with each other. Or, not that Allison was hostile to Patty, but Patty just wasn't getting a sense of why Allison mattered at all. And over the course of the series, I appreciate that they slowly became friends and learned to appreciate each other and all that other kind of stuff. But especially this last episode felt very forced and rushed, that there's all sorts of things that were just jammed in there together, and that there were other people who seemed to have more natural resolutions, like the Sam situation with Jen. You got a sense of they divorced over time, their relationship disintegrated over time, and then they got divorced, and that now he's able to keep his diner. And you could hope that Neil and Diane are able to build their relationship up together and have a solid relationship with each other that they've been working on. But these two, it still feels fairly forced that right up until the moment that Allison left, she was sitting there sabotaging Patty and trying to hurt her, and not necessarily to hurt her, but was quite willing to do things that were going to hurt her seriously, just so that she could have the life that she wanted. And it was really just one moment where she said, oh, okay, maybe I should leave, because when I leave, my own life will be better, and I don't have to figure out how to save Patty. She'll just have a better life, and everything will be okay. So I am all for female friendship movies. I think females should have good friends, and I have a number of strong friends, and they are so important. I work hard to nurture those friendships. But the two people in this series felt very forced, like they were plot characters that are being pushed towards each other, not that they were actually fair-minded friends where both of them were working on it. I saw a lot of effort that Patty put into maintaining the friendship, and it seemed like Allison was not doing that. That if anything, she was sabotaging and using Patty and manipulating her and trying to get her to use her girlfriend to get information on how the investigation was going, and trying to use her for all sorts of other things, and using her when she was too afraid to do something on her own. So it was really only that last minute when Patty was crying and saying, I don't know what to do, where Allison said, oh, I guess I will leave, which is what she had been planning to do the entire time. So it wasn't even, like I said, a big sacrifice in that kind of sense. And then she came back and put Patty at risk, even though, again, the thief had died from his coma, but there were still all sorts of other ways that things could have gone sideways. But Allison was thinking primarily about herself, and Patty just took her back with open arms. So I still don't see this as a fair relationship, And especially with Patty just kicking Neil out and saying, I want to be on my own and I want to really focus on myself. Oh, but wait, I'm going to have this woman who can be psychopathic living with me because I'm sure that that'll go perfectly fine and there won't be anything wrong with how that goes going forward. So I find that a bit iffy and wish that it had not quite ended up like that, or that maybe they needed another full season to be able to get that relationship to work out in a way that I felt was more healthy. All right, so how to summarize this? I went into this 2-season series thinking it would be about an Edith character, or one of those other kinds of characters who is downtrodden, and having her strength and showing her compassion and showing how she is able to counter the situation. And instead we have a character who is selfish and nasty and hurts other people, and who just does that over and over and over again while causing pain and agony to the people who are trying to support her. And even in, we'll say, the pivotal moment where she finally makes a decision to do one thing, it's not a sacrifice. It's the thing that she's been trying to do this entire time. She's been given the money to be able to do it easily. And she finally does it because she's about to be caught. And that just doesn't seem like a valid kind of life change for me. And then even when she gets away, she says, oh, well, I guess I didn't really want this after all. And she comes right back, even though it could put other people at risk. And she confronts Kevin in a way that could absolutely have put all sorts of other people at risk. So she is just starting up an entire new whirlwind of disaster. And maybe they meant for this to go on to a season 3, and maybe it was going to be about, oh, Kevin didn't really die in the fire, he escaped somehow, and now he's coming back on this massive revenge thing that was going to turn into a horror film or a thriller film or something else with Kevin, the nasty, insane psychopath, trying to kill all of them, which, is in essence what would have happened if this kept playing out like that. So I am not keen on the storyline. I'm not keen in general on the way that they portrayed people in abusive situations, with a few exceptions that I mentioned. The way that Neil and Diane went through their situations felt very realistic and I thought were quite well acted. The way that Sam cheated on his wife and then realized that they were just never happy together, is a great character. No, but it's, realistic. That sort of thing happens. And he was able to start off a new life for himself. So there were other of the side characters that I appreciated, and I don't mind that people have flaws, but I was just so disappointed in the main character, in the way they portrayed her, in the way she was acted, and in these, random things of, well, everything's set up, but oh wait, the house burns down, so I guess that takes care of all of our problems. I just don't like endings like that. It feels fairly cheap and contrived, I guess is the word. So I'm glad I watched it since it was set in Worcester. I guess I'm glad I watched it in the sense that this is how people are portraying people in battered women's or battered partners situations. And it's good to know what's out there, but I wish that it was done better, because there are a lot of real people in situations like this, and it'd be better if we understood the kinds of challenges they face so that we could help them realistically. So I like that they show that it's a challenge to leave, and that it might take a couple tries to be able to leave, and that you need support structure to be able to do it. And I suppose I should also mention that I really like the way they address heavy drinking in this, that you want to find a supportive community, you want to see if you can join an AA group or some other group that appeals to you, that it's not going to be easy, that you could fall off and have to start again, and that's part of how it goes. And I like that they had Diane facing that at the end, saying, you know what, I am committed to being sober, and if you're going to go forward with me, you have to make this commitment too, because I just can't do it with someone else being actively drinking in my life like that. So there are a number of aspects about this that I enjoyed immensely. Just the overall storyline of what they said they were going to offer, I don't feel that they offered, in terms of the main character finding her own path on her own terms and doing that in a way that seemed realistic. So those are my thoughts. Let me know if you have any comments in the comment area, and I will move on. I think the X-Files has some Worcester scenes, so we'll see what the X-Files has to offer. Is the X-Files going to be more realistic than that? Well, I guess we're going to find out.